Welcome, everybody. I think some of you are familiar with my work, but there's always something new to see, and that's kind of my message of today. In fact, I want to read you a quote that I found really interesting, and this is what it says. Wait, I better be here. Is that better? Yeah. Yeah, okay, sorry. So this is the quote that I found really interesting that I think applies to this, and what it says is this: living in discovery is at all times preferable to living through assumptions. And I think the thing is, as the older we get, it's sort of like, we know that. I don't need to go there, or I don't need to follow that, because we've been there. But maybe there's something new to discover, always. So I'm going to take you on a tour today, and I'm inviting you to see things in new ways, which is what really got me into aerial photography. What I'm going to do, the 99s is a woman pilots organization that was founded by Amelia Earhart, and I'll mention a little bit about it later on. But first, what I want to do is introduce you to the piece on Chronicle when I was on Chronicle several years ago.
Up in the air, next on Chronicle.
The aviation program at Bridgewater State University nearly guarantees a job for its graduates, as we'll hear in just a moment. But first, in 1997, Margot Cheel began her professional photography career, firmly planted right here on the ground.
But one flight really was all Cheel needed to take her career from earthbound to airborne.
We are so lucky. What a fabulous day.
For aerial photographer and pilot Margot Cheel, a nearly cloudless sky is her idea of a perfect day at the office. Cheel came to this unusual profession through a circuitous flight path. After her daughters left for college, she began exploring a new horizon. One introductory flight, and Cheel was hooked.
And I was exhilarated by the view that you can see from above. A totally different vista on the world, and a perspective that you just don't see in your everyday life. And it's nature and it's beauty and what's happening up there and down there and around you that you don't see until you get that perspective from on high.
Cheel's stunning photographs are sold in galleries and collected in a coffee table book of her work called Sea and Sand from the Sky. Cheel also lenses aerial pictures for real estate companies and is commissioned by private clients who want landscape portraits for all sorts of personal reasons.
I find that's often what my assignments are for. A place that's really special, where it's a summer cottage that people have gone to, and it brings memories to them. Or some rock over Cohasset Harbor where somebody was engaged. All these different kinds of special meanings. In the landscapes, we connect to land, and I'm up in the air being able to record that for people. So that's a thrill. I like being able to do that.
An experienced pilot, Cheel wisely lets someone else do the flying when she is clicking away. On this day, longtime collaborator Chris Heilberg of Alpha One Flight Services is piloting his Cessna 172. The pair departed Plymouth Airport to explore the ever-changing contours along Duxbury's stunning coast. So much of the photography is of the coastline. What is it about that fascinates you?
There is something really interesting about the way the land meets the sea and the shorelines, which are so different in many cases. And the colors that come up are just fantastic. That, again, when you're standing on the beach, you don't really see. And then to see how rivers meander and where they go. So that's been a big fascination for me.
Cheel's digital photographs have a painterly quality to them, and very often an ethereal allure as well. She says seeing the world in such a breathtaking way can't help but turn you into a bit of an environmentalist.
It raises an awareness, which is one of the purposes of my doing this kind of photography as well, is to bring that awareness to people about what's going on out there in nature. And if this is something you love and this beauty is here, don't you want to do something to preserve it? And if not, then what you see today may not be here. So let's go on a tour of places that maybe, that definitely you know, because I'm going to start in Cohasset, and then we're going to go down the coast towards the Cape. So one of the things that I emphasize, and I've said already, is that, and what's so fascinating about the aerial view is of the Earth is that you get to see these patterns that are just fascinating and interesting and informative that you really only see from above. So this is what we're going to be doing. So, recognize where you are? So this is a big long shot. Of course, this is Sandy Beach, Sandy Cove, and then Hull and Boston. And when you're, thank you for my height. So when you're in a plane, a commercial plane, often you can be over this, but you don't get to be quite this low to see it. And then here we are right over Cohasset with the town common and, of course, Sandy Beach right there. It's so interesting and wonderful in the fall when the air's so crisp like right now, how images come out so well. This is later in the fall. This was November, and this was sort of a surprise that the light, it's like 3:15 in the afternoon, and the light is so low that it just glows against the trees. And that morning, oops, sorry, just a second. Down here, see this? That's snow. It had snowed. And then, you see, it had melted because it was still warm enough. But the image of the common was just awesome that day with the light. And then, this is a very rare picture because it's not often that you can do aerials in the winter with snow. The snow can not be covering the land enough and it looks blotchy and yucky, or you can't get off the runway because it's too icy, hasn't been plowed, or just too dangerous. So this was kind of a special day to be able to get this picture of Cohasset in the wintertime. Now this, just to get your bearings, this is the harbor, and we are looking south, and there is the Gulf River, okay? So let's move on to, it's the next view. This is Cohasset Harbor also, looking out towards the ocean, and you can see, like, here is the Sailing Club, there's the Yacht Club, there's Sandy Cove, and Sandy Beach. And we just live, I mean, it's such a gorgeous setting. And to be able to see it from this perspective, to me, I just love it. So you all know this. This was interesting. I've been out there and taken photos a number of times. And this next one, I was actually in a helicopter. I don't fly helicopters, but I was with a woman pilot who was flying. And it was pretty dramatic, and which was very cool for a photo, but I remember her saying, "Are you done yet?" Because the thing about a helicopter is it doesn't glide. If the engine goes, you go right down. So anyway, I was happy to really get that photo. And then this is interesting. I wonder how many of you know this. I didn't until I was in the air one day. So there's Minot Light, and this, you know, there's the Adams Estate, and this is like a sandbar that has been there for years and years and years. And I understand that because it's there, that really you can only see from the air at low tide. It protects the peninsula here. Even though it's rocky, it still has acted as a protection against it. So that was just so fascinating that, and you see what an aerial can do. Okay, so now, I think most of you would recognize, this was a beautiful time in the fall with World's End, and then its view to Boston. And one of the things too is that with the trees lined the way they are, that Frederick Law homestead, you know, originally set out. Did any of you know that it looked like that? Some of you may have. seen this before, but again, this is something you may be on the path, but you may never have seen it. And then to see it in a different season, that's what it looks like in the fall. Yeah, it's just beautiful. Now, going down further south to Scituate, I'm sure you're all familiar with this, at the harbor. Then, this is a bigger scene of it. And somebody said to me one day, you know, the Scituate Harbor is in the shape of a heart. And I said, what? And I didn't know. Maybe you can see it there, but you can see it even more here, right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't see that when you're on the beach, or you're driving by, or you're getting in your boat. Okay, and this is really, this is one of those islands that's in the North River. And again, it's very clear that it's what shape it is. And I want you to just look at this. I'm going to say something about it that's similar to this in a few slides ahead. Okay. So now this is the spit. I remember when I first heard that this was its name, I thought, they call it that? But it is a term. And apparently, if you're a boater, you really have to pay attention because this area can be quite treacherous, and you have to watch the tides. I mean, this is here. This is the North River that empties into the Atlantic Ocean, but you have to be careful as to just where you're going because of the tidal changes that are there. And you can see that you wouldn't want to run into this. This is more at low tide. And the other thing, which is pulling back a bit, that's the tip of Hummerock, and it's amazing how the erosion, see this? Yeah, has happened there. And again, it's just protected, and it's not protected by anything, so this is what happens there. Okay, so here's the North River, and I love how I ended up first taking this photograph. I had somebody ask me to take a photograph of the North River, and the reason is that her daughter had gotten married. She came down on a pontoon boat down here, and then she got off, and she was in her wedding dress and bare feet, and she got off, and she climbed up into the woods here, and that's where she got married. And I mean, I love how it really shows you so much of how it is and how pristine it is, because, you can't build within 300 feet of the shoreline. And then when it's fall, it's just so spectacular. One of the other things that I find so interesting, and this is now coming up with the way the angle of the light on the landscape, so that you see up here, it's that cobalt blue, really, I mean, people ask me when they see this, do they say, did you do something to that photograph? I didn't, and in fact, I was at least 10 miles away when I saw this from the air. I was off doing something else, and I said, oh, we have to go there, we have to go over there. So, and then you see how it then changes because of the angle of the light, and we get down here, it's almost black. Okay. And this is like a bigger picture. See how I call it the 90-degree angle of the river there in Marshfield. And then how it winds all the way up to the spit, up here, and then empties into the ocean. Such a gorgeous river. Then, now what's interesting about this picture is, see, here's the spit, but it's looking very tame, which is because it's more high tide. So this is on this side, it's Marshfield, and they're islands. And maybe some of you know this is Truant's Island. And if you live here, well, yes, you could maybe get there by a boat, but mainly people have cars and they need cars. So this is the road. And you have to watch the tides because at high tide, depending on the tide, it can be covered. And I caught this fellow on his way, and it looked like it's getting close to high tide. And I got a closer picture, and I had this at a show in Marshfield one time, and somebody came up and said, I know who that is. And he was on his way to the dump. You can see something white in the back. But anyway, you have to pay attention when you live there. So this is Duxbury, and this is Powder Point Bridge that most of you know. It's gorgeous how many different angles of our coastline that there are, and the color that comes up at different times that you can see here. This is it. So this is the wing of the plane. This is the strut, and there's Powder Point Bridge, right there. So one of the things I learned if I was going to do somebody's home that was on the water is that I needed to pay attention to the tides. So one time, it was in the Duxbury, Plymouth area where someone asked me to do their home. And I went there, and it was low tide, and it looked yucky. I mean, it was sort of muddy, and it wasn't even nice. So I said, I'm going to have to come back another day. But because I was there, I flew around, and I saw things that I discovered, something I hadn't expected. So these are oyster beds that are there. And it was so interesting. And then when I looked closer, I said, wow, you know, this is really low tide. That's really cool that I can see that. And one of them showed up this way. I mean, it's totally like nature's art, just right there, which was so, so beautiful. And if I hadn't made the mistake of going to find somebody's home, you know that expression, life happens when you're busy doing something else? Well, this is an example. And there are a number of examples. I'll show you another one later. This is Bug Light, which is like right in Duxbury, Plymouth. And it looks like this stubby, tiny little knob, you know, from above. But I was in a boat one time, and it's pretty, it's up there, but not like your usual boathouses. Of course, what's beautiful is the colors that are around it. And this is New England. This isn't the Caribbean. This is us right here. Now, this is also that same area. And what was so fascinating was, see this down here? And remember I said, remember the other, and with the heart? So this is a sunken ship from probably over 100 years ago now. And it's preserved. I mean, it's just amazing. And it's something that's only revealed at low tide, which is what the other one was revealed. Going up the North River, the other one was that way because apparently there was a shipbuilding area that was up there. And this was maybe just bad luck. But it's just, it's there. At high tide, you don't see it. And most likely in a boat, you don't see it either. Now, this is that same area in the busy, busy summer months. I get the sense that this to me looks kind of like a shark with shark's teeth. What do you think? Really busy. That's Duxbury Beach. See how long that is? Just interesting. And then, what's interesting in this picture is since I showed you Bug Light, there it is, right there. Still looks tiny. But you see how this, and then all the other boats that are here. And this was just a different angle, just because nobody's here because it's way too shallow. But look at how beautiful the color is. And one day later, off season, I caught it this way. Much more peaceful. And in fact, I've had prints of this made and also note cards, and I call it Serenity. So sometimes you get, well, all the time with flying, you deal with weather. And this was really interesting this day. This cloud bank was all up and down the coast. See this? And it didn't cover because there's the water, and that's like the Cape area over there. And this is Cohasset. There's Sandy Beach right there. But I could still do some photos, and it hung out there for a ways. It didn't interfere with me, which was but I thought this was really fascinating that that's the way it was that particular afternoon. Then there was another day. I was heading towards the Cape, and I thought, oh my heavens, I don't know. But the co-pilot who was with me said, well, let's just see. Well, we can always turn back if we need to. So we headed down, and we were going to Chatham. This was up near Wellfleet. And when we got to Chatham, see, and it cleared. Well, the clouds were there, but it cleared far enough away. Now, this is the area that there have been a number of breaks over the years. So this, and I'll show you some more pictures of this. This is Cape Cod National Seashore, which has had these different breaks. And this is looking at it. So this is a break here. This is one that happened in the late 80s. And there's this one, which has been the most dramatic, and I'll show you some pictures of that. And just since this picture was taken, right here it broke too, right there. And if you know Chatham, their lighthouse is right there. So this is what happens when it breaks in this particular area. It had all of this expanse of water to spread all of that sand. And to me, it was just absolutely beautiful. It was sort of like a scallop. Look, like this is like nature. It was like formed by sand. And I always think about this poor little boat. See, for a lot of fishermen, this wasn't their favorite thing. They couldn't get out the way they used to. So he was sort of looking for a way to get out, which would have to be further up that way. So this continued, and this was maybe 2 years later, and this was late in the season. This was in November when I was there. And what I discovered that I didn't expect was, look at this. There's a windsurfer. There's one down here, and there's one there. And it was just, I mean, it was so cool that there was there in the landscape. And particularly in November, but you know, they had the right gear on. So I took some close-ups of them too, see? Yeah. He was having a ball, yeah. And talking about things change, this is the same area, and this is what it looks like. I took this picture last fall. So it closed in. I kind of like it the way it was before. But that's nature, and that's the sea, and that's what's happened. So now this is also in the Chatham area, and so over here there's a lighthouse called Stage Harbor Light, which is a small, tiny lighthouse, and it sits in the middle of sand dunes, and I wanted to take a picture of it. So we're circling around, and it just wasn't working. I wanted the water in it, I wanted the lighthouse, and it just wasn't working. And so as we circled, and I would be going around like this, I got to about here, and I could see this sailboat coming along, and I thought, well, that looks nice, and I took 2 shots. This one this has been the most popular of all my photos. And you know, the other thing is, this is that expression of life happens when you're busy doing something else. I was busy trying to get a lighthouse, and it ended up that I got a sailboat coming out. And also with all of this, which again, it only happens at that moment because of the way the tides are, so that some sand is exposed and some is underneath, and gives you all these gorgeous colors. This is in Cape Cod Bay. Does that look like clouds to you? Of course, I gave it away. Because people look at this and they say, oh, what pretty clouds. And then they look closer and they see this and they go, ooh. Those are people. And this is what it's like in this section in Cape Cod Bay when it's low tide. This is that same area this here is the entrance to Barnstable Harbor. And all of this changes all the time. And it's just beautiful. Now, this is the same area. And to give you a perspective, see, here's the entrance, like I just pointed out. And then this is the Cape all the way up to, this is Wellfleet around here, and then up to Provincetown. And I want you, this is where we're going to go next. This is a little island that's up there. So go up there. That's what it looks like. And it actually did, in about the 1800s, there was a community that lived there, farmers and fishermen. But the sea came in with the different tides. This is like the remains of what the town looked like. Yeah. The other thing apparently is that there were goats that were brought onto the island, and they ate a lot of the vegetation, and that contributed to the erosion. It's called Billingsgate. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things about the 99s. It's the Woman Pilots Organization that you can see was founded in 1929, and it's still going today, almost 100 years now. And our purpose is to promote aviation for all ages of women. So we often go, this is in Connecticut at the Air Museum there. And you see Amelia's there. It was founded, as I mentioned, by Amelia Earhart. And these girls were just so enthusiastic. And there was another time when I gave a talk, this was in Boston, at an Apple store, as a matter of fact. And this particular young girl was homeschooled. She had the best questions and was the most interested. Others were, but she was the most interested and the most engaged. And if you notice what's behind up on that incredible screen, it's Cohasset. Recognize that? So the 99s is promoting aviation for women at all different ages and levels. So many people, as I was doing the photography, had said to me, you should put these in a book. And I said, okay, just like that. It takes a little work, but I had some good people helping me. And so I discovered that a lot of what I had would be of interest to anyone, not just people who lived in the area. A lot of people that are into boating, because there's so much water, has an interest too. This was, if you can see at the bottom, the book has images and quotes, and from different aviators. And we had to say travelers because one was from someone who was blind, but she still could see in different ways. So this was a quote from Edgar Mitchell, who was the astronaut for Apollo 14. And I really like this. And of course, any quote that you put into a book, you need to have permission from the person. So we need to make the world safe for creativity and intuition, for it is creativity and intuition that will make the world safe for us. So I sent an email to some address, and I got a response. And he was in Florida. And it turned out I was in Florida at the same time too, in the next town. And he said to me, if you would like to come by to my home/museum, I'd be happy to show you around. So I did. He was the nicest, the kindest, and he had all kinds of memorabilia from his time of flying and landing on the moon. It was very, very special. And he, I asked him about the quote, and he says, I have so many quotes. I sort of remember. That's fine. You just use that. So the other thing that I really liked was in his kitchen, there was a big poster, and it said, "Fly me to the moon." And he said, my daughter gave that to me. So, and interestingly enough, it was one of the anniversaries of his going to the moon, the day that I went there. Kind of just, it's like, whoa, yeah. So, remember I was talking about patterns and shapes. What I loved and what I noticed was that there would be kids that would come to my shows and they would look at things and they would start seeing something in ways that are kind of unusual. So this particular picture, I remember this young boy said, "Mommy, Mommy, look, there's a gorilla." And I went, oh yeah, look at that. There's a gorilla. Because kids can just see things. So that spurred me on. I said, you know, it would be fun with all these different shapes that are down there, and really to see them and to encourage not just kids, but everybody to see things from different perspectives. So I did a book. And I called it, "What Do You See? Finding Shapes from the Sky." And I say this is from ages 4 to 94. So, because we all need to see things in different ways. And kids, you know, they have no problem. They'll just do it. So the other thing that was really fortuitous was that I was able to publish this book and the other one, Sea and Sand, through a printer in Maine. And I was able to go on press and to be able to check how everything was. And virtually one tiny little thing just had to be adjusted, and everything else just came out beautifully. Yeah. This is down near Marshfield. You can see all kinds of things. I kind of think of this as like a Rorschach test. You know? Remember those? Different faces. And this too. Sometimes, you know, if people don't live in New England, they say, what are those red things? Now, you all know, right? That's a cranberry bog. I think it looks like a little monster like blowing off his steam off, right? Yeah. Okay, so here we are, back to Cohasset. And so, as you probably know, so here's the town pool. Here we are, right here. It's hidden by the trees, right here. And where the arrow is, this is where the yearly pumpkin patch is. It's down in there. There's a picture of this that's in the pumpkin patch book. So one of the things about taking aerials for the pumpkin patch is see how the tree, how narrow, you probably know this, that Wheelwright Park is really narrow. And when you come to October, the angle of the sun is low. And what we found after the first year or two is that I needed to be there around noontime, because otherwise there would be shadows that would be cast on the design. A couple of times we liked the shadows and we left it, but other times we wanted to just have it plain. So here you go. There's the one that was on the cover of Vista, the pirate. And you know, when you're on the ground and you walk around, you just think these are paths. You can't really tell. This one was amazing, right, David? David Bigley was a big help with all of this too. So it was a chess, and people actually came along and did play chess. Yes, yeah. So they were the witches and the ghosts. The witches versus the ghosts. It was really, really, I think that's, to me, was just one of the best. So for 20 years, no, it's now about 22, 23 years we've done it. And last year I have been saying we need to do a book. Well, it's not this book, but it's over here and you can have a look. But my feeling is that these books are really for all ages. This was my grandson some years ago, and of course he had to put his foot in it. You know, stamp of approval, how about that? And then checking it out. He says those were mountains, you know, where that was the seacoast. But, you know, it's what you see. And these two girls were into it also. So that's my talk.